Good morning, everybody. How are you? Somebody told me y'all had a late night last night. Is that true? Or maybe it was just a few people had a late night last night? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, Next Generation 911. And it feels like I have been talking about it forever. As I was preparing for this presentation, I was looking back in my notes, and I first started talking about Next Generation 911 before it was called Next Generation 911, and that was about 2002. And we called it the Future Path Plan of 911. Future Path Plan wasn't very sexy, so we had to come up with a better name for it, and the buzzword at the time was, Next Generation 911. So in 2004, that's where we created that term, Next Generation E911 at that time, E meaning Enhanced 911. And as you can tell, we set out this great strategic timeline of going to D.C. and doing all kinds of neat stuff. We've been doing all that since 2004. We're still doing that in 2016. We're still not there yet. I've done a lot of presentations for GIS, different groups, and I think I counted up over the last 4 or 5 years, I've done, 6 presentations all about Next Generation 911. So it's really, it's been something that's been main focal point for me. But sometimes I feel like the dad on that vacation trip and the kids are in the back of the car and they're, well, Homer Simpson says it best, I think. And it worked 10 minutes ago, I swear it did. All right, let me back this up.
There yet?
No.
Are we 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 there yet?
You little...
Homer, I think we're there.
Woohoo! I think we're there. This is what we're hoping to build, this grand super highway with all these 911 calls. In fact, there's over 7 million 911 calls answered in North Carolina. So it's a lot of traffic. And we're trying to build this big super highway to get there. But unfortunately, where we are today, I don't feel like we're on this super highway. We're actually me driving my old pickup truck down this gravel road. Barely keeping it on the road. That's where I feel like we're where we are today with Next Generation 911. There's a lot of things happening, but unfortunately, none of it has happened yet. But we're getting closer and closer. Where's our technology at today? Well, this is, one of these great technologies that wherever you are, you can take Pokemon and play it. So we've got super technology for that. But then, I love this great piece of technology. This is actual flight footage. It's not simulated, from Amazon. And we can deliver a package right straight to your house or your business, wherever, with the technology we have today. So we've got all kinds of wonderful technology available. My employees will tell you that I often say, technology is not our problem. People are our problem. Technology can do a lot of stuff. Here's a fine example, unfortunate example, of where people can be a problem.
Guys, this woman is a teacher, mother, and now widow after her husband collapsed in their home. She called 911 right away, but the call went to the wrong county, and she now knows her cell phone led to crucial delays in getting him help.
We have a rescue squad like 1 mile from my house. Why aren't they here? I have a rescue squad down the street.
Too much time focusing on what my address was and not enough time, in my opinion, being beside my husband trying to figure out how to perform CPR.
Problem: that dispatcher wasn't even in the same county. Despite living in Cary, Wake County, Allison's 911 call was picked up by nearby Chatham County. Why? Because her cell phone pinged off the nearest tower, just over the county line. If she had had a landline and called from it it would have gone to Cary 911, and her address would have popped up automatically. Instead, confusion,
Are you in White County?
wasted minutes,
Yes,
and
yes.
41-year-old
Okay.
Kevin Varoom didn't make it.
I feel 911 failed me, not EMS or fire. I feel like there has to be a better way for citizens, residents that are making calls anywhere throughout the state, county, to be able to expect that their call goes to the correct location.
There is a better way. It's called NextGen 911, an internet protocol-based system that allows digital information to flow from your cell phone to the 911 network and onto emergency responders in a third of U.S. states, but not in ours.
We live in North Carolina, which is by far one of the most technologically advanced states in the country, and it just seems that it would be expected that our emergency response system would also have the same, progressive technology.
When calls come in from a cell phone,
And the story goes on for about another minute or so. Technology was not the problem there. 911, she stabbed me in the heart when she said failed her. The failure was Chatham County opted to only have available their jurisdiction on their GIS screen for their telecommunicators. Even though the state of North Carolina, through our orthography program, distributes orthos that go outside every county boundary 10 miles. And the reason we do that is for this very reason. Just to know that that call was coming from outside the county, they could have possibly have transferred the call or at least called over to Wake County and said, you have an emergency here. But unfortunately, nobody knew where she was. That was a personal decision that somebody made in Chatham County. So technology is not our problem. It's the people. It's the people. No matter what we do, we still have got to make these things work. So that's why it's important for me to be coming to these types of conferences to help you understand it's not just about your little jurisdiction. And as we move forward with Next Generation 911, 75% of our 911 calls now come from wireless devices. Landlines, as she was speaking of, would have located her immediately. We're getting less than 17% of our calls come from landlines, and they are becoming fewer and fewer and fewer. That's why Next Generation 911 is so important. So what is Next Generation 911? It's a specialized system made up of network components integrated to deliver 911 services over a flexible IP network. Today, we're sending 911 calls over basic analog telephone lines. That was the system that was created back in the 60s. And the system was actually created to monitor and bill for long-distance phone calls. That's the very same system that we're using today in North Carolina. With Legacy 911, calls flow using databases that contain a fixed address and a fixed database comprised of address range, boundaries, points, landmarks. This is the state of North Carolina. The different colors indicate different telephone regions. And in each telephone region, there is a selective router. There's 16 selective routers in North Carolina. Unfortunately, and just take Johnston, Wake, and Durham, you'll see there are three different colors. Three different colors, three different phone companies, and we cannot transfer a call from Johnston County to Wake County to Durham over the native 911 network. Major thoroughfares going through all three of those counties, major population areas. But with the old legacy network, we're not able to transfer those calls. Same way all the way across. Anytime you see a different color, we're not able to transfer calls within those areas. So what is Next Generation 911 going to do for us? The call is still routed through a network, but an IP network. But rather than collecting location and the attribute information along the way, it's routed based on the geographic location, and it's getting information from several different sources, not just one MSAG, if you're familiar with that, a Master Street Address Guide. The idea being from Murphy to Manio, we'll be able to connect every single 911 center, and there's 117 primary 911 centers in North Carolina. That is our goal. Do away with all the colors. So, what is next generation? Number one, we want to route calls to an appropriate PSAP based upon the location of the caller and the supplemental information that's gathered within the network. So we have an accident right there on Robeson in Hope County. It goes to a cell tower. Cell tower says it goes to Hope County, but Hope County says, nope, it's not ours. It's actually over in Robeson. If they knew that, and then they would be able to transfer that call back over to Robeson County for the proper response. The ability to display the call location on a common map, regardless of where the call is received within the system. That is crucial, that every 911 center have a mapping system that they can track these calls. And every center has got to be able to do that and be able to transfer it. So it's very important. That's where standards are coming into play through the national level, through National NENA. Got to show you a block diagram. It's always a requirement on any presentation that you have to do a block diagram. I have bad eyesight, so I did not make an eye chart, so I hope you can read this. But this is basically what our next generation routing will look like. You've got your databases from the MSAG, Postal Service. You've got your GIS data. You've got the validation function, and I love this acronym, Location Object Service Translation, or LOST. That's just, who came up with that? Really, guys? But you see all of that comes together to route to the PSAP. So what's important for next generation in order for it to become viable and efficient, you have to have correct data. That means you cannot do your data once a year. It's, with the growth in North Carolina, we are constantly updating information, and we've got to have correct data. It's got to be updated. And for all of that, the data has to be seamless across the entire region, the state, and eventually across the United States as Next Generation 911 is being deployed. The one thing that we have to be very concerned with, remember the map with all the pictures going across the different colors of North Carolina, all those selective routers, they're going away. In fact, we've already been told by two major companies that 2020, they're going to quit using those selective routers. So that means our network has got to be in place. We have got to be doing something before then. And that's why we're working so hard to get there. This past month, the 911 board approved the North Carolina GIS conceptual design document. This is a document, it's about 60 some odd pages long, that was put together as we're working towards our EZNet project. We've already issued the EZNet RFP. Hopefully, within the next month or so, we'll be able to award that. Can't talk much about it because we're in the negotiation stages. We've also issued part of that RFP is the hosted telephone solution. We've issued an RFP for what we're calling the NMAC, which is the Network Management Assistance Center. And then the last RFP that will be going out shortly is the RFP for GIS. And that'll be the coordination of everybody's GIS product into one central database. This is a great document. It's a good read, and I would encourage you to go to our website and download the document. I'll give you the location of it here in just a few minutes. But there's a couple things that are very important in here. And I think I saw Joe Seawash in here. The light was reflecting off his head when he came in, so I knew it was him. But Joe has worked very closely with the folks at National NENA on the standards and on putting together this information that we're going to be needing for Next Generation 911. Some of the key pieces, they have three different elements here: required database information. This is what they're suggesting should be required of every database that we have. The road centerline requirements, PSAP boundary requirements, and emergency service boundary requirements. Pretty much what we already have today. Pretty much. Those are the required databases. The strongly recommended information would be street aliases, site structure and address point, landmark points, landmark aliases, state polygon. And state polygon, The North Carolina Geodetic Survey maintains a state boundary and works with local governments to maintain that data set. They're updated on an as-needed basis, so our GIS vendor, whoever that will not be responsible for having to maintain that. They're going to dip into that database from North Carolina. In addition to the state polygons, we have county polygons, and then the incorporated municipal polygons. And much like the state polygon, the North Carolina Secretary of State's office in this case, and DOT are in the process of assembling data sets for municipal boundaries. They'll be updated based on digital submissions from local governments. What we're hoping to do is work collaboratively with all the different agencies, so there's not somebody calling you constantly and saying, you know, we want this update, tomorrow somebody else is calling. You know, we want to work with everyone so it's not being a pain to you. But we want to be sure that we're also getting the latest and greatest information. So it's going to be very important that you keep your information up to date, and hopefully through the process, you know, we're not going to be badgering you for these downloads. Also, in the strongly recommended category is the unincorporated community polygons. Unincorporated is listed in the standard, is inserted for completeness, but does not exist as a statewide data set. It may be maintained by some local governments. Strongly recommended county polygons, incorporated municipal polygons, unincorporated community polygons, neighborhood community polygons. All of this is great information, but again, it's strongly recommended, not a requirement, but we're going to encourage you to put that in there. And most agencies, at somewhere within a county or a city, this information is already being maintained. It's just not always being shared with our GIS centers. Recommended database information includes railroad lines, hydrology polygons, cell site points, and mile marker points. That clear coffee is really not doing me very well this morning. So here's the document again. It's on our website. And I think I got a slide out of order there. We're talking about a lot of agencies right now tell us that they are already Next Generation 911. There's not a PSAP in North Carolina that is Next Generation 911. Don't care how much money they've spent to whichever vendor, they are not, because every call still goes through one of those selective routers. So we're not there yet. And you can call it pre-NG911 because it has a lot of the functions and a lot of the features, but it is not Next Generation 911. The General Assembly back in 2014 said that all PSAPs must have a backup PSAP in place. With Next Generation 911, we'll have a lot of that taken care of. Unfortunately, we don't have that. We do have probably about 16 PSAPs that have NextGen 911, but not a single one of those can back up each other. So if you stop and think about the whole concept, resiliency, redundancy with Next Generation 911, what we have today is not there. But a lot of people think we are, but we're not. So when we look at a PSAP manager, and this is where I know there's a big disconnect because I've traveled across the state. I go into every PSAP. PSAP managers are always juggling something. Most PSAP managers, not all, but most PSAP managers are not real technologists. They're worried more about who's working 11 to 7 tonight. They're wearing a lot of different hats, and they're having to juggle, a lot of balls. When we brought about wireless 911 in 1998, all of a sudden, instead of dealing with just the phone company, now they're having to deal with all these different cell phone companies, which becomes a challenge, in addition to all the other things that are going on inside a 911 center. And then you throw in stuff like Next Generation 911, throw in mapping and all this stuff, and these guys are getting well overwhelmed. And by the time we get to Next Gen, poor PSAP manager thinks here they are 3 people in one juggling all these balls. Most PSAP managers I've run into don't have a great relationship with their mapping folks. It's almost sometimes adversarial. Now, I've seen some great relationships, but a lot of them, in Chatham County is a prime example. Is there anybody from Chatham County in here? Since I'm using you as a poster child. But I do know in Chatham County, just from personal knowledge, that there's not a good relationship between the mapping folks and the 911 center, which is sad. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. So as we look at next generation 911, juggling all these balls cannot fall on just one person. It's got to be a shared experience with everybody involved. Walt Disney said this a while back, and I keep this posted on my office because I think sometimes we fall into this trap. We do a lot of talking, but never any doing. And if anything drives me crazy, it's to spend hours and hours and hours talking about something, meeting about something, but not doing anything. And so I've kind of taken this attitude over the last year and a half. We've got to quit talking and start doing. And that's where we are right now. Our timeline is to have an EZNet start to be implemented later this year, along with our hosted customer call-taking equipment, our MAC implementation, and GIS. Very high level. We're going to be pushing it to make it happen by the end of this year. But that's where we're looking at right now. That's our goal. And that's where I'm pushing the 911 board to go there. But it is a tough, tough, tough move. By 2018, we're expecting to put our first 911 center on the EZNet. EZNet is Emergency Services Network. And then by 2020, when those telephone companies who have already told us they're turning off those selective routers, we plan on putting the last PSAP on the EZNet. There's 117 primary PSAPs. There's 11 secondary PSAPs. So we've got a lot of work in front of us to do, a lot of work. But that's where we're going. We're not talking. We've got those RFPs out there, and so it is happening. But as you can see, this year is going to be a very, very busy year. But it's going to take the cooperation of not just folks on our end, it's going to take the cooperation of each and every one of you, because you see the GIS piece is probably the key to next generation 911, because that's how our calls are going to be routed. That's how the calls will be moved. And it's very key that we have, as you saw earlier, accurate data, up-to-date data, that we're able to move those calls from Murphy to Manioc.
We have a lot of faith in 911, but the system can break down more than you think. And when it does, people can die as a result.
Chanel Anderson was delivering newspapers in the dark in suburban Atlanta when she careened into this pond. She knew right where she was.
The fairway in Batesville. Batesville and what? The fairway is the street, ma'am. Fairway, I don't have that.
But 911 dispatchers can't find her on their map. It took first responders nearly 20 minutes to get to her.
She died because a system we expect to save our lives failed her. And 911 losing valuable time simply because dispatchers have trouble determining your location is not unusual. The FCC estimates improving location accuracy could save over 10,000 lives a year, which seems like a worthwhile goal. People making emergency calls are on the very short list of things we expect to be found 100% of the time.
Want to be found 100% of the time. Think about it. If you're making that call, do you want to be found? Whoop. Well, there was supposed to be another video there. But anyway, that goes technology. So when you want to look at this document, and I encourage you to, please do, go to our website, it.nc.gov/NC911 board, and they tell us that this new format of our web page is easier to navigate. I guess an old dog, and it's hard to teach old dog new tricks, so I have a little trouble sometimes navigating, even though I know all about it. You'll go down and there'll be panels, and you'll see a panel that says 911 boards and committees. Click on that panel and you'll see these committees. Look at the technology, formerly Next Generation 911, and you'll actually see all the documents that we have in there, including the GIS conceptual design document is located there. And you can download it. It's in a PDF format, so it's no problem to to get to. So, a lot of stuff going on, but you guys are the key to it. And I may sound a little harsh sometimes, because it is. When you hear somebody say, when you hear a widow say the reason she's a widow is because 911 failed her, I do take that a little personal, because that's what my job's all about, is not to have that happen. Sometimes we can't prevent what does happen, but things that can be prevented, we certainly feel like we need to take that type of action. So, with that, I'll entertain any questions that anybody may have. Yes, ma'am.
With outsourcing the GIS component, do you see that going totally to the private vendor, or do you see them working with local government? What's the connection between both?
All right, and I have to repeat this question because this is being recorded, so I have to see if I get this right. So, what is you're asking with the potential outsourcing of the GIS database? What is the connection between that vendor and local government? Good question. Good question. I see that, one, as one of the requirements of what that vendor will have to do. And whether it's working through some type of simple download system, or we're going to let them decide how to do it. We're not going to tell them how to do it. That's one of the things that has taken us a little bit longer, I think, with all of our RFPs for this project, is we're not dictating to anyone how to do it. We're telling them what we want the final product to look like and how they get there. That way, this is so new. We think we know everything, but we don't know what we don't know. And so if a vendor's got a better way, better solution, we want to hear it rather than dictate to them how to do it. But that is one of the key elements. They've got to work closely with local governments. Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor, how much funding is actually going to be dedicated toward this effort? And with the General Assembly's concern more about bathrooms than public safety, I'd like to know what kind of money is being put forward in this effort.
All right. The question is, what kind of money is being allocated toward this project, with the General Assembly focusing more on bathrooms and some of these other important or other social issues? Your concern is how much money is being allocated towards this. Okay. Good question. Good question. We actually got kind of blindsided in a way 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, from the General Assembly. They asked me, what kind of money did we have set aside for Next Generation 911? I said, currently, the way the legislation is written, we're not allowed to set aside money like that. We have to designate our money to 3 different pots, and by June 30th every year, we have to zero those pots out. And they said, that's crazy. And I said, well, that's what y'all gave us to work with. So they said, and passed a bill, it's been 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that 10% of all the money that comes in right off the top, before it gets separated and designated to any other pot, 10% off our gross income, which is completely from telephone bills, 10% goes straight to the Next Generation 911 Fund. The Next Generation 911 Fund has been established as what is considered a statewide grant fund, which allows the 911 board then to move monies into that fund. So at this point, we've got roughly around $9 or $10 million in that fund. We have not spent one penny yet, but we anticipate with the EZNet being awarded, hopefully in the next month or two, we will start spending money, but still money's coming into that fund as well. Does that help? Yes, sir. And let me give you a sideline. We have the ability, right now the 911 fee in the state is 60 cents per connection. We have the ability, the 911 board has the ability to raise that fee or lower that fee up to a maximum of 70 cents. That discussion has already started, and we have to do an actual vote on that in March by law so that it can take effect by July 1. I don't anticipate it increasing this year simply because we don't have the cost figures yet. But I can almost reassure you that by next year, that 911 fee will increase as we start having those expenditures for NextGen. So we are putting money aside and looking to the future on that. Yes, sir. Two questions. You're only allowed one. But you can have her question.
After that last discussion there, a lot of our counties use 911 money for 911 services or whatever. I know half my paycheck comes from 911 funds. So is this going to affect how much money trickles down to the counties through that program?
No. And that's the answer, but let me repeat the question for the benefit of everybody that was listening. His concern is even part of his salary, it comes from the 911 fund, is the impact, the financial impact of Next Generation 911 going to impact the funding available to local governments? The short answer is no, okay? But let me give you the long answer. This is not an infinite pot of money. And we've been working with local governments for years now to try and get them to do a better job of managing that fund. Right now it's kind of like, Daddy, I've run out of money, can I get more allowance? And we've pretty much been doing that. And unfortunately, we're going to have to be a little careful on that. We've already started putting caps on what you pay for monitors. We've done some statewide grants like the orthography. It is a great example of how much money we're actually saving by doing the orthographies each year and providing those to local government free of charge. We're saving, we know, probably anywhere from $12 to $20 million a year just on that one project. So we're trying our best from our end to be good stewards, and there's other things that we're working with local governments to try and cap those costs and control the costs just for that very reason. Okay? Question 2.
At least for 4 years, I've been hearing NextGen 911, NextGen, and how GIS-centric it's going to be and all that. I don't know if anyone else has heard it or not, but I mean, I keep wondering what's going to be the impact on my day-to-day. Being short-staffed, you know, I'm busy enough already. I support this, absolutely, but
Okay, first off, we're not going to talk about size. So if you got short people on your staff, don't, you know. Y'all missed that. He was talking about his short staff and wondering what the impact was. And I guess you're talking numbers, not size. Okay, I was just joking with you. All right, the question is, he's been hearing about NextGen 911 for 4 years now. He wants to know what the impact is going to be on his day-to-day workload. He doesn't have what he feels like is adequate staffing. And so what's that impact going to be? You know, I wish I could sit here today and look at my crystal ball and say this. But as you saw those requirements, you know, you see what is mandatory, what's recommended, and all those. What does it take for you to maintain that? And if you're in a 1 or 2 man shop, can you do all of that in your county and keep up with all your all the work that you've got before you? I can't answer that. I think it's going to be each individual county and what your responsibilities are. But there will be an impact, but we're going to try to make it as minimal as possible. As we said, we don't want, to be calling you up every day and, can you give me this? Can you give me that? We want to make it very simple. Yes?
to follow up on that, on one of your earlier slides, you mentioned that you're going to collect annexation for the towns through the Secretary of State's office, and is that how city limits are going to be met? And perhaps PSAT boundaries?
Yes and no. Okay, because PSAT boundaries probably are not in the Secretary of State's office. I can tell you that. What we're going to be doing is trying to use every database available to get this information. City limit boundaries change worse than PSAT boundaries. Yeah, so it's, I forgot to repeat the question. The question is, with these additional databases, such as city limit boundaries, PSAT boundaries, the slide indicated that it would be maintained at the Secretary of State's office. How is that going? Is that going to be the only source? Is that? Yeah, no, the goal right now that we're looking at is all these different databases are out there, and we want to draw from each one of them. The DOT Rome project is probably one of the best examples that we've seen so far, where they're collecting all this data. Well, if we can go straight to DOT in Rome, we don't have to go everywhere else. And so that's what, we're trying to look at all the different avenues, all the different databases. As you saw that slide, there were several databases, and that's all part of what's going to make this work. Right now, in our legacy system, we have one database, period. And it's maintained locally through the MSAC, and it's a civic address-based database. And so that's not going to work. That's why we have problems like what happened in Chatham County. That's why we have problems that happen like in Georgia. And as, last week tonight, or tonight last week, or whatever the name of that show is, it happens over 10,000 times a year. So, did I answer? Yes. Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. Really? And I wish I could give you that straight answer right now today, but that's one of the areas that we will have to. The question was, golly, I keep forgetting that, is right now there's differences between cities and counties about jurisdictional boundaries and that type of thing. How will that be handled in the future with NextGen 911? Is that paraphrased pretty good? And I wish I could give you that answer. Right now today, I cannot do that. I wish I could stand here and say, this is how it'll be done, but I'm not there. Not there. Oftentimes I'll say that's a local political issue.
I know we have probably 2 or 3 dead areas around our county, and we just say, we'll respond to them. So-and-so's not going to respond, we'll respond. Somebody needs to respond.
Right.
We kind of say, we'll take it easy, but I know of at least 3 areas where there's citizens that are in a hole.
And what her comment was that they have several dead areas, she calls them, in her county where nobody takes responsibility for response in those areas. And so from the county perspective, y'all take it. Is that great? All right. Any other questions? Good questions. Good group. With that, go forth and multiply. Have fun and enjoy the rest of the conference.